Let's check in with Charles Moon on the trading floor in Chicago with with Trading Advantage. Charles, thanks for joining us. We've talked a lot about the strategy of central banks, so let's skip all that at this point. Where do you think the stock market's going this week?
I think it goes in both directions, quite honestly, we're seeing a lot of outflows and inflows, right? We're seeing the outflow from bonds and precious metals, inflows into the U.S. dollar, and a lot of positioning. Actually, we saw a divergence on Friday in VIX products. The market was down, the VIX was up, and then all of a sudden it started shooting down aggressively, and someone was pressing the position, and all of a sudden the VIX ended up negative for the session. And that's just an anomaly you don't really see, but when you tend to see that divergence, you know, my fellow colleague, Michael Shore, from the options side of our company, actually said we should see an update today based on the divergence in the VIX products, and sure enough, here we are. So we're seeing a lot of money either taking their positions off and taking profits out of their markets, or they're positioning themselves for a pretty major move here this Wednesday.
Charles, for those who are less familiar with VIX, which really is measuring volatility in the market, why does what you just say matter?
Well, again, it's a fear gauge, right? So when the VIX product goes up, generally speaking, the corresponding move is that the major markets move down. And so when people are buying into the VIX, they're buying into the possible fear. And the possible fear is that the markets are going to fall apart or move lower or continually transition down. And then all of a sudden, when the market was down, and we had some pretty heavy selling on Friday with Options X, we saw the VIX just start selling off. And generally speaking, when that happens and the market's supposed to shoot up at that moment, we didn't see that. So when we see that deviation, that divergence, it kind of gave an alert, especially the guys that are familiar. You know, Mike was a market maker at the CBOE, so he's quite familiar with VIX products. And when he saw that, he recognized what the possibility is. Maybe ultimately it's just someone making a major play here leading into Wednesday. We don't know. But when we saw that divergence, this is what he expected today.
So the setup going into Wednesday, there's a very low expectation that the Fed will increase interest rates. Let's assume that they do, though. What's the pain trade based on the positioning that you've been seeing?
Well, you know, you got to watch what the VIX does. If the VIX starts rallying, that's a great way to go. Maybe the U.S. dollar, we saw that inflow of big money into the U.S. dollar here, so you might want to look at the ETF, UUP. And of course, this is just more than anything, it's just a hedge for the investors, right? Because the investors are long-term players in the market. They're going to have to deal with the percentage gains and the percentage losses in their portfolio, and ultimately they're looking for yield. But if they want to kind of deaden that blow, that might be where they might want to transition some of their money. There's nothing wrong with taking profits also. You can always get back in if you absolutely like said stock or said ETF.
You know, you're talking about ways to position in volatility. I've been seeing a lot of analysts comment on a stock that you might want to invest in that does well in periods of volatility, and that's Apple. And we've already seen some outperformance in that stock. Do you think that that's a name to hold when people are feeling nervous about everything else?
It's dependent on. If you position yourself here just in recent days, I would say you got to look to at least protect your profits, right? Put in the stop, lock in some profits, because we don't know which way the markets are going to go. Ultimately, the Fed could actually hike rates, right? And then the market corresponding move could be up when everybody expected to go down. And it's the same fashion, the Fed stands pat, and then all of a sudden the market moves lower when it's supposed to be a positive response. So we don't know. We don't know exactly the ultimate reaction and what institutional money is going to do. We're going to have to wait and see. To me, Apple, it's a little bit overbaked here. You know, the numbers that came around in terms of sales, they said it's 4 times what it was a year ago. But then, of course, the 6S release was very light. They had a huge inventory. They actually had to stop production on the 6S because the demand wasn't there. So to me, that was more of a headline grabber than anything. I want to see what the comparison was ultimately to the 6 on that 6 release and the continuing sales. You know, they had the conference out. You know, everybody, AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, all said they saw a big jump in sales. And the Verizon CEO, of course, said that they didn't see that big of a jump. So we're going to have to see the demand. I think a lot of people are actually going to wait for the 7S. Sure. That's where the bigger perks are going to come in. You know, they just transitioned over. There's really nothing new that's going to be that, in my opinion, that's going to make people jump from the 6 to the 6.
Charles, I got to
to
jump in because we've almost run out of our time with you. Got about 15 seconds, but oil is higher today. It's a very important move tied to our stock exchange here. You highlighted the weakness in the U.S. dollar today. How much of oil is just dependent on which direction the U.S. dollar moves right now?
I think it's some, definitely, but we've seen some moves that just deviated on its own. I just think people are trying to play crude right now, position themselves for, what the possible moves by OPEC. We're going to have to wait and see, because if oil starts crashing, that could really help drop the markets down lower with it.
Indeed. Charles, thanks for your time. Always appreciate it. Charles Moon, Senior Equity Trader at Trading Advantage, joining us from Chicago.